All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Karthik from August Academy. We are Chennai based and we help a lot of Indian students get into some of the premier MBA programs abroad. Thanks to GMAT Club for hosting us today. I believe we are streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook right now. So I'm the chief consultant here and I have two guests with me today. Kaudi, who just started college at the McDonald School of Business, and Raghav, who just got into Rotman in the early admissions round, right? Kaudi, can you take some time to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thanks, Karthik. Hi, my name is Kaundinya, short for Kaudi. Uh, I'm I just joined McDonough School of Business. I applied in the pre-COVID world and I got accepted, and I'm starting college in the COVID world. I'm basically from Chennai. Prior to coming back to school, I worked 7 years at Infosys Limited, most recently in the consulting function. So I'll be starting college tomorrow. Over to you, Rakav.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Kaudi.
Cody.
Raghav, maybe.
Yes,
Raghav, can you
for
introduce
sure.
yourself as well?
Yeah, hi guys. Good evening, everyone. This is Raghav Kanotra. I am from a city, Panchkula, in the state of Haryana, in India. I recently got admitted in Rotman School of Business, and I applied with Karthik in the early rounds, and I got accepted. I am currently living in Dubai, working in L&T Electrical and Automation, which is electrical part of Larsen and Toubro. And I've been working in L&T for 4 years now in project management division, and I basically work for Saudi Aramco projects, oil and gas projects for L&T. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Raghav. So, guys, Kaudi and Raghav typify, you know, the most popular Indian applicant stereotype, right? Both of them are Indian, both of them are male, and both of them are engineers. So let's give like a big thumbs up to both of these gentlemen here. And they made it, right? And our intention is to figure out how we can help you make it as well. I have a presentation. It's a fairly longish presentation, but I'm going to zip through it for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we are going to open up the floor for Q&A. So, you know, just be attentive for 10 minutes and then we are all yours, right? So sharing my screen right now. All right. So Indian candidates applying to US MBA programs, what should you know, right? Like I said, my name is Karthik and this is a special session for GMAT Club. So which aspect of the MBA application process do you find it difficult, right? I mean, there's typically we found out that there are about 6 areas where students find difficulties. The first thing is you don't understand what schools want when they ask you a particular question, right? So Yale has this question, describe the biggest commitment you've made. What is a commitment? What does it mean for something to be the biggest commitment? Should you talk about a personal story? Should you talk about a professional story? There's a lot of ambiguity centering around this question. So we help you interpret that question. We help you figure out what's the best story you can put forward for this. There's a good group of people who believe that they don't have achievements that are strong enough to differentiate themselves from the competition. Uh, that's true for all of us, right? The truth is, we are all very similar in our upbringing. We grow up in middle class households. We go to CBSE schools or state board schools wherever you study, and then we go to like a typical engineering college, graduate, and then we get into a typical job. I did the same thing, and a good number of the students that I work with do the same thing. So how do you differentiate yourself? That's a difficulty that a lot of people face. There's a good group of people who are not convinced about their achievement, who are convinced about their achievements, but they don't know how to explain themselves clearly. And that relates to the fourth point, which is you cannot write in a non-technical manner. Uh, there's a good group of people who don't know what realistic goals are and when their goals are far-fetched. And then there's also a group of people who have difficulty managing application timelines. So typically, these are the areas where people find the most problems. It appears that what most top business schools look for is someone who has a 760 on the GMAT, studied at one of the older IITs, but doesn't work as an engineer, right? Because an engineer is the stereotypical profile. Maybe they work for a McKinsey or a Goldman or a Blackstone Equity, some of these top tier feeder firms, so to speak. But it's not just that they work in one of these firms, it's also that they are doing a lot of very valuable and very attractive extracurriculars, right? This is just made up, guys. There's no real person who has a profile like this, but it's just made up. So maybe they advise the prime minister's economic team, maybe they run a successful startup on the side and spend 4 hours a week supporting an NGO, have interesting hobbies, like they may probably an amateur pilot, or they've sung vocals for A.R. Rahman songs. This applicant doesn't exist, but this is the kind of applicant we've been asked to think will get into a top school. And in short, this is the kind of applicant, right? I mean, we believe that the ideal applicant is like a Superman, but the reality is that most of our applicants are like this. Okay, yeah, we may wear a cape, and in fact, this was a presentation that I made last year where only superheroes had masks. Now all of us have masks, right? So there's no uniqueness or differentiability there as well. We try to fly, we hold on to a rope, but we are really just falling down. We really don't know what's happening around us. And this is really, a famous character from The Simpsons. If, it's a series that was very popular about 10, 12 years ago. Bart Simpson is one of the quirkiest characters ever to adorn US national television, right? And we took Bart Simpson and we Indianized Bart Simpson and we gave him a name and we called him Bharat Swaminathan. At first, we said this is what August Academy's poster applicant looks like, but then this is what most applicants look like. 700 to 720 on the GMAT, and you have to understand that 700 to 720 on the GMAT is actually a very, very good score. And the best explanation I can give for you is at 700, you're probably at about an 87 to 90 percentile on the GMAT. And what that means is for every 100 applicants who take the exam, you're in the top 13%, which means it's actually very good. But you are forced to think that that's not very good, right? But this is the truth. I get a lot of inquiries every day. Everybody gets between a 700 and 720. There are people with a 550 and they're still trying their best. 740 is very rare. And if you get a 740, then you're blessed, right? A lot of applicants from India are engineers. A lot of applicants are male. This is not an Indian thing. This is true in the West as well. This is an area where schools want to see a lot of representation from women. And most of our applicants have little to no extracurriculars, right? So that's really the reality of the situation. Okay. So how do you do this? Because this is intended to be a short presentation, I'm going to say the single most important thing that you can do to enhance the strength is you can't change your GMAT. You can't go back and change your college grades. You can't change the place where you worked 4 years prior. You can't even change the nature of the work that you've done. The only thing you can do is think about all of this, figure out where the most attractive portions of your application are, figure out where the most attractive portions of your life story are, and communicate that very clearly, very unambiguously, right? That's the most important thing that you can do. Let's look at some examples. This is me. These are some of the students that we worked with in the past, right? So Kaudi and we worked with them like in the very recent past, but these are some of our earlier students, right? So Rahul was someone who worked in the supply chain function. He was an SAP consultant. So one of the major instructive points that we worked on for Rahul was how to be a little bit more descriptive. So the first version of the resume I got from Rahul, he just said, I led an 8-member team, 3 words, that's about it. And that somehow didn't seem attractive, right? So, and then we pushed Rahul and then we got him to explain himself in a little bit more detail. And lo and behold, the 3-word bullet became 2 20-word bullets, right? I mean, I'm not recommending that you write 20-word bullets. Try to find a way in which you can communicate your work experience impactfully, but also concisely, right? But then think about the difference between leading an 8-member team and then whatever follows below, which is lead the supply chain, human resource, and financial analyst teams responsible for a lot of things, right? Communication, conflict resolution, training, representing the team at client meetings, delivery, and support. And not just that, but he's also interfacing with the client's business teams. And there's like about 6 or 7 business teams that he interfaces with and seeks new business from them, which means he's helping the client and he's also helping his parent company. And he's actually generating revenue for his parent company and savings for his client company. So this is an extremely valuable member. And all the value that he's contributing is not getting communicated properly if he just stops at let 8-member team, right? So think about what kind of impact you are making in the workplace and communicate it. Just be unafraid and bold, right? So here's the secret sauce that we identified in Rahul's file. This was an opportunity that was not presented in the first draft of the resume. Rahul was a stereotypical IT engineer, right? Now, what does a stereotypical IT engineer do? He does technologies. Please don't use the word technologies in your resume, right? Uh, if I ask people, then the next step is working on timelines, Kanban. There's agile teams and short sprints, and this is all very standard terminology that I get in any IT resume, right? But think about it. Rahul has gone beyond that. Rahul is an SAP consultant, right? So he consults on site at a Midwestern company, which is in the manufacturing sector. All right. So somewhere along the lines, what Rahul's done is the manufacturing floor, there was a labor problem. And the specific issue was this. They were threatened that the introduction of software was going to affect their jobs in some manner or the other. And now the management of the firm could not handle that issue. And at that point, Rahul raised his hand and he said, hey, you know what? Why don't I try convincing the union? And then he talks to the members of the union and he explains to them exactly what this software is going to do for them and how it's going to help them benefit their lives, make their work easier. And by just stepping up and volunteering for this, he was able to de-escalate this conflict and allow production to happen again. Now, this is not something that typically gets reported in a software engineer's resume, right? But Rahul did this, and I'm sure you guys have handled certain conflicts in your life as well. So please come forward with it. Yeah. So the other problem that a lot of people find is they think they don't have a lot of extracurriculars, and this is where I'm going to give Aditya as example, right? So I spoke to Aditya a lot, and Aditya is a very standard IT applicant, no extracurriculars, and I'm like, no, Aditya, that cannot be right. I'm sure you've done something interesting in your life. And then he says, hey, Karthik, you know what? When I moved to Bangalore, I was really addicted to Pokemon. So do you think that's worth writing about? I'm like, what is Pokemon? And like, you point your phone and then you capture like small creatures which are virtual and, augmented reality and all that. Like, that sounds very geeky, but tell me more. And he says, hey, you know what? They've actually designed this whole new game which interfaces on like the existing world. And I am not from Bangalore. I moved to Bangalore to take up this job. And, when I started, Pokemon actually helped me discover the city. There were raids. And because of that, I explored the whole of Bangalore. And I made a lot of good friends, including international friends, right? And usually after going for a raid, we would sit back, socialize, trade stories from our hometowns, and learn about each other. And there were certain times when I was actually leading my team, and I got a lot of leadership experience as well. Like, this is brilliant, right? So that's what MBA colleges want to hear. They want to know that you're doing something interesting, that you have international diversity, that you are able to work in a team, that you enjoy the process of exploration, you are intellectually curious, and you have good leadership skills. So what if all of this is exhibited in the Pokemon world, right? The skills are real. And so this is the story that we wrote for Aditya. So, it's not just Pokemon for Aditya. We've had people writing about Dota conquests as well, right? So there you go. That's an interesting extracurricular that you may consider. And the last bit is figure out how to connect your past experience with your future goals. There's a whole lot of students who approach us who say they actually want to work in sports management. What kind of sports management? I want to manage a premier baseball league team. Like, what background do you have? I watched Jerry Maguire when I was growing up. The movie seemed exciting, and from that day on, I wanted to become a sports team manager. Like, no, that's not how you become a sports team manager, right? You need to have relevant experience. Have you played baseball? No. Then why do you think you can become a sports team manager for a baseball team? Right? I mean, there's this whole set of questions that come. So don't state goals which you are interested in simply because you believe they are very attractive career options. Now, every time I say this, I bite my lip because I don't intend to stop you from chasing your dreams. I want you to follow your dreams. If you really want to manage a sports team, I want that to work out for you. Okay. But perhaps writing about that in an MBA application when you don't have relevant experience may not come across very strongly. So think about it as two different things. Getting into business school is the first step, and getting out of business school and chasing the career of your dreams is the second step, right? You cannot do the second step without doing the first step. And so I want you to get into business school, which means write about goals for which you have adequate background. Okay. What did Vignesh want to do? Vignesh wanted to revamp the food supply chain in India. What was his professional background? He was an IT engineer. So how does an IT engineer ramp the food supply chain, revamp the food supply chain? Somehow that didn't compute, right? So, and then we had an extensive conversation with Vignesh, and then we realized that, hey, Vignesh comes from a family of farmers, all right? So his grandfather's a farmer, his uncle's a farmer, his dad's actually the dean of a veterinary institute, right? College. So he's a veterinary doctor, right? So there's a lot of farming background in his family, and what he has faced every summer, whenever he goes to his hometown, is a lot of the produce is transported from the villages to the city and gets spoiled in transit. They don't get the kind of prices that the product is actually sold for. So, right, the farmers sell it for like an abysmal amount, but it's sold in the markets for like a premium amount. And most of the money is made in the middle, right? The farmers actually don't get a lot. So, this is something that has deeply affected Vignesh. What did he do at his IT consulting firm? He consulted for an Australian retailer. And specifically, what area? The food supply chain, right? Cold storage. So in Australia, he discovered that farm to table happened much more efficiently because they had a much more efficient supply chain. And he actually had some kind of professional experience rejigging the retailer's supply chain because he was the IT engineer responsible for that. Now, put it all together, he has a great backstory. He has some professional experience that he can contribute. So stating that he wants to revamp India's food supply chain is actually not that audacious a goal right now. So think about what you want to do, think about whether you have the relevant background for it, and tie it all up. So these are really the three tips I have. Now, of course, we can explore a lot of other areas in your Q&A right now. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and then I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Go for it, guys. Okay, while we have questions coming up, I want to congratulate Kaudi for starting college in the COVID world. Kaudi, can you take up a minute to talk about your experiences, especially with the online classes and all?
It's been an interesting experience. I think there is no other way to call it other than that. One advantage we have had even during this time is that because a lot of colleges have kind of delayed the start date, it has given people a lot of time to network. It's not just the formal networking sessions, but we have had tons and tons of informal networking sessions such as watch parties, poker nights, and even just regular Zoom sessions to just talk about current events or even share embarrassing stories about each other. So I think because all these have happened, we have quite a strong bond among ourselves. And it's really good getting into the school with that kind of a understanding about each other on who your future classmates are.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaudi. Raghav, we need some COVID advice from you as well. How has it been applying in the COVID world?
Actually, for me, COVID did not impact that much. The deadlines were shifted a bit. I think a month ahead of what they were used to be in the last academic year. But apart from that, I believe the advantage that COVID has given, as Cody rightly said, as in the deadlines were shifted and the new admits had some other, as in more time to interact with new applicants. And I believe I took advantage of that and spoke to a lot of new admits. So I believe that was one of the advantages that I feel COVID had in this applying academic year.
Thank you, Raghav. So I think our audience has started asking us questions, and Kaudi, there's a question for you. Can you talk a little bit more about your story and application experience?
My application process, I actually started this. I definitely don't recommend to people. I started just a couple of days before the deadlines. Anybody who's really interested in applying to a college seriously will definitely want to start well ahead of time. It's not just the preparation for GMAT that requires us to invest time. It's also how you research the colleges, how you are a right fit for the college is something you'll need to have clarity even before you understand. I was lucky I was able to do that on the go, but I would definitely not recommend doing that. I should really thank Karthik, who helped me figure everything out in a span of, I think, 10 or 11 days. But I would strongly recommend that you start your research about the schools that you want to target right from the day you start preparing for GMAT. Or even if that's too early, preferably start preparing once you have taken your GMAT. But don't wait till the application deadlines, because it's simply too overwhelming when you start pretty late during the application process.
Raghav, I think somebody wanted to ask you the same question. Can you talk a little bit more about your story and application experience?
Yeah, sure, Karthik. Actually, unlike Cody, I decided to go for an MBA way before I took my GMAT and way before I started my application. So during the years I was working, I was always thinking how an MBA will benefit me and what field I want to go into. So I did a lot of research about what field I want to go into, and with my experience, I figured that supply chain management and operations management is something that intrigues me a lot. And but no matter how much you think about it, how much you plan, you need someone like Karthik to actually collate and give you that shot. So thanks a lot to Karthik for that. And I believe with GMAT, you need to figure out what the goals are, what your goals are, and what you actually want to do. Because after MBA, MBA is a tool which you will use actually to proceed forward in your career. So you need to be really clear about your goals.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Raghav. I think this question is for you. Raghav, what is the reason behind choosing Rotman, Canada instead of any other school in the US?
Okay. So basically choosing Rotman over any other schools. First, I would like to say that I want to work in North America, so Canada and US become the obvious choices. But apart from that, I believe I have a preference towards Canada. And because of that, I narrowed it down to 2 or 3 schools in Canada. But Rotman, one of the best schools in Canada, I believe I went for Rotman because of that. Rotman is very unique from the research that I've done and the alumni that I've spoken to. Rotman has a very unique approach and has very different learning experiences like self-development lab, leadership development lab. And these are the experiences which you look for in an MBA, right? So because of that, I chose Rotman over any other school. Thank you.
Yeah. Interestingly, I've been to both of these campuses, Rotman and Georgetown. And one of the most important things that strikes me about both of these campuses is the community is very warm, right? And that is also something that people don't value enough. But the more supportive the community you belong to, the more you can grow as a person and as a leader, right? I think we had a question. A commonly asked question by Indian applicants is about GPA conversion. Is it required to convert your undergrad GPA percentage to a US 4.0 GPA scale? Which these schools asked to convert the converted GPA figures and which don't? Uh, did you guys convert your GPA? I don't think so, right?
No,
Maybe not.
no.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what scale your academic performances are reflected in. It could be a percentage out of 100, or it could be a GPA out of 10. I know there's a few colleges where your GPA is out of 5. So whatever your native reporting system is, report it in your native system. And it's not just the front of the transcripts that's important. The back of the transcript is also important, because the back of the transcript is typically where they give an explanation for how you are rated in your system, right? And then colleges are very good with evaluating you in your native rating system. So don't worry about converting it to a 4-point system. Most US colleges accept your native system. So I think that's the second question is not that relevant. A follow-up question to this is there any credible conversion method that you would suggest to follow? Well, this is going to cost you some money. There's this US organization called WES, World Education Services. So you may look up their webpage, and they have a product which they offer. I think it's about somewhere between $200 and $300. And I mean, you follow the process and you send in your transcripts to them, and then they would do the conversion for you. It is not required, but if you really want a conversion, then getting a WS conversion is the most reliable one. Yeah. What are the most strong extracurriculars? Uh, Everything works, guys. I mean, I've had people who contributed to nonprofits. I've had people who are sports people. I've had people who are musicians. So, either be very good with a hobby and be very passionate about it. I have had people who consider reading as a hobby. Guys, what were your extracurriculars, if you want to share?
Yeah, certainly.
Raghav, you want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. My extracurriculars were, I am really into board games, and I think that was the crux of my storyline as well. Strategy board games such as Avalon, uh, Notre Dame, and I think that is something that really interests me, and I'm very passionate about that. So I think that was one of the extracurriculars which I believe, made me stand out.
Cody, do you want to share?
I dabble in wordplay all the time. So even during my interviews, that is something that kept coming up, and I was able to talk because I always dabble in that. So I think there's no strong extracurricular, just as you mentioned. It's how devoted you are or how passionate you are about what you do during your non-working hours that matters.
So I think both of these guys hit the nail on the head. Raghav used the word passionate, and Cody used the word devoted. And that's what matters at the end of the day. It's not what you do, but it's about how well you do it and how much liking or affection you show towards it. And that's what counts, right? Tariq has a question. How can I overcome my low graduation score in my MBA application? Uh, Typically, there are two things that you could do. The most obvious thing that you can do is to get a very good GMAT score, right? The second thing you can do, which people do quite often in the US, but not so much in India, is they have this concept of building an alternative transcript. This is possible to do in the US because almost every university offers you the possibility of signing up for their classes as uh, an extramural student. All right. So you could be working in the area, but you could actually enroll. So if you're in Austin, you could sign up at the University of Texas, or if you're in California, you could sign up at the University of California, Berkeley, for example, and you could sign up for their courses. And you can get a grade from it. And if you do about 3 or 4 of these courses and you get very good grades, then that becomes an alternative transcript. What can you do from a distance? I believe UC Berkeley and UCLA have this concept of not executive education, but extended education, right? So just Google it up. So they may allow you the possibility of taking courses remotely and online. So you may take some of these classes, about 3 to 4, and get good grades. When you choose classes that allow you to showcase your analytical strengths, right? So problem solving classes. That's important. Now, there is one other thing that you can do, which is if you have worked in an area which requires you to spend a lot of intellectual horsepower, right? So, and a lot of programmers are working in an area where they do spend a lot of intellectual horsepower every day. And supply chain planning, that's, yeah, I think I'm back, right? Supply chain planning, that's also a place where people have a lot of analytical workflows in their work process. So in your optional essay, in your optional essays, you can talk about how you do spend a lot of time doing analytical work, right? So these are really the three different things that you can show. The presentation. Thank you, Banu. Any other questions? How to position my government job in the application to help improve my chances? Government jobs are great, right? I mean, you actually have the opportunity to create a lot of change and impact if you have the will to do it. So talk about what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis, and then based on that, think about how you are impacting your target population. So I don't know what exactly the nature of your government job is, but let's assume you work for a public sector bank, right? So let's assume particularly that you work in um, lending departments, right, for MSMEs. So how do you decide who to give a loan to? How do you decide who not to give a loan to? And how do you maintain your relationships? So these are some of the things that you can talk about. So when you talk about how you maintain client relationships, you're talking about your interpersonal skills. When you talk about how you do credit ratings, you're talking about your analytical skills. And when you talk about your general awareness of whom to give credit to and whom not to, you're actually talking about uh, your overall understanding of the economy and a few business areas, right? So this is how I would treat a banker's file. Again, we don't know what kind of job you are into, so we'll have to examine that in a little bit more depth, right? Any other questions? How to research about college placements and related resources. Thank you, Sanjeev. So typically, the main areas would be look at the college website, attend college webinars, and talk to seniors who are studying at the college. Again, I want to ask Raghav and Kaudi how they did that. How do you research college placements and related resources? So
Just
Kaudi, why
as you
don't you go?
mentioned, it's the college website. It will typically have the reports, employment reports. Other thing is attending the sessions. And additionally, what I did was I spoke to the alumni who kind of fit my group or fit my profile of coming from India or from engineering background, and what their career goals were and how they sought internships and went for full-time placements. So combination of all these three will kind of give a picture on where exactly somebody with your profile has made it. That's how I went about my search.
Raghav, do you have anything to add to that?
No, absolutely not. I think Cody has covered it all. I think the college website where you have all the employment reports, and obviously talking to an alumni will help you a lot in figuring out where the college will take you.
Okay. Raghav, I'll hold you on for a little bit more. I know you were passionate about Rotman. So Pranav's question is, how does one go about researching the fit to an MBA program? It's related to the earlier answer that you gave, but maybe you can add on to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as in, if you have to understand what business school will give you the empowerment that you are looking for after an MBA, I believe with that goal, you will be able to analyze which MBA program will be able to is a perfect fit for you, or and in the same way, which MBA program are you a perfect fit for? So in my case, Rotman was the perfect fit and is the perfect fit. That was purely because the type of the developments that I wanted. So I wanted to develop leadership skills. I wanted to develop analytical skills. I wanted to develop interpersonal and communication skills. And Rotman actually gives you all of that. So it has, like I earlier said, it has unique learning experiences like self-development lab, leadership development lab. It has something called as a CDL, that is Creative Destructive Lab, which is basically for entrepreneurs and people who are into innovation into different industries and fields. So Rotman is actually a very unique place to be in and complete your MBA. So for me, I believe that the everything encompassed in the same school was which made it a perfect fit for me. I hope I answered
Thank
that
you.
question.
Yep. Cody, do you want to take a shot at this as well? How did you figure out your fit with McDonough?
I really looked at it as what I will get from the school, not just to, from the employment perspective, what will I learn that I could use several years down the line. And I saw that I want to work in the consulting industry, and McDonough has a pretty strong presence in that. And what's more important to me is what I want to do in the long term, which is in the non-profit industry. And McDonough was pretty strong in that as well. And it was a easy choice for me to select where I would want to end up.
So, if I'm to paraphrase what both Raghav and Cody said, understand what your goals are. And the first thing is the school that you target needs to help you achieve your goals. So, figure out a school that has strength in the area that you see yourself working in. The second thing that you would look at is you would talk to a few seniors and you would try to understand if that's a community you want to be a part of, right? And that's an intangible, right? I mean, it all depends on whether you like your interactions with those people. And oftentimes, I've had people being really interested in a school before they talk to a group of people who study there, and then after they have these conversations, they come back and say, "Hey, Karthik, you know what? I'm not that interested in that school after all. I'm not going to name these schools." And then the opposite is also true. There's some people who are very reluctant to apply to a particular school, and then I would push them, and then they would have a few conversations, and they're like, "You were right. You know what? I talked to some seniors, and they're like really excited about the school, and this seems like a great place for me to study." Right? So both of these things happen. So two things: figure out if the school has the strength in the area where you see yourself working in. That's the practical aspect. And then there's the emotional aspect. Figure out if that's the community you want to be a part of. What about schools for MBA without GMAT requirement, both US and Canada? Are they not a good option? Should we go for it? Secondly, which country? Canada versus USA in today's world. Uh, Third is public versus private university. Okay. Uh, I mean, there are some schools which have given you the possibility of submitting a GMAT score later. If uh, if you're very confident about the GMAT score that you are likely to get, then by all means go ahead and apply. If you're not that very confident, then I would still suggest that you wait till you finish your GMAT and then you target your applications. Why do I say this? Every single applicant who I talk to who has not taken their GMAT tells me they're targeting 740. All right. But 740 is a 98 percentile score, which means for everybody who says this, uh, only 2 out of 100 people actually make it, right? So 100 out of 100 people say they're targeting 740, but 2 out of 100 people actually get it, right? So there's a lot of variability there. Despite our best intentions, things may not happen the way we want them to. If you're very confident and you have realistic reasons to believe that you will actually achieve a certain score and that score is in the ballpark of what is required to get into that school, then it doesn't matter whether you apply with or without the GMAT, and you can always submit your GMATs later, right? Otherwise, I would really recommend that you save your money and apply later. I have given the GRE, not the GMAT. Am I at a disadvantage? Not at all. Both the exams are perfectly fine. Would it be advisable to show an intent to migrate in our essays? See, I mean, almost everybody says they want to work in the same country that the college is located in, all right? And they just leave it there. They don't really talk about their life stories. They don't talk about the fact that they want to live in a particular territory for the rest of their lives or anything. So, I mean, that's how most people do it. Uh, Talk about your career. Don't talk about your immigration plans necessarily. During these testing times, is it advisable to go for such an industry dependent degree like the MBA, specifically if on campus experience is threatened? The MBA is not industry dependent. It's a management degree, right? I mean, it's a degree that offers you training in certain business functions and leadership skills that will allow you to work in an administrative, managerial, or strategic role in any industry you want to work in. All right. With regards to this on-campus experience, I'm going to defer to Cody here. Cody, how's your experience been so far?
Yeah, it's been good. I think even all the universities have taken a lot of initiatives to make sure that experience is not threatened. Just to rephrase whatever is mentioned in the question, they have also taken a lot of measures to make sure you are getting an enhanced experience, which you may not get in a in-person setting as well. So it's been good so far from whatever I have seen.
Thank you. So, yeah, you've heard from somebody who's actually going through their experience right now, and he's happy with it. Right? So, can I apply to an MBA as a fresh undergraduate student, or should I work before for best chances of admission? The practical answer here is it is better for you to work for a few years, get a GMAT, and that enhances your chances of admission. But the philosophical answer is you don't really know for sure that you need to do an MBA unless you've actually worked in the corporate world for a few years, right? Um, so I'm going to ask you guys this question: do you feel that the fact that you worked for some time helped you gain clarity with regards to how you wanted to shape your careers? Maybe Raghav, you want to go first?
Yes, absolutely. Working for around 4 years actually gave me a lot of clarity what I want to do for the next 20 or 40 years of my life. As in, I started to work as an engineer in L&D, and for a very brief period of time, my job was, limited to the technical aspect of projects, and I started managing projects at a very at this beginning of my career. So managing projects in Saudi Arabia gave me a flavor of supply chain management. So that is where I got interested into that field, and here I am today. So I'm admitted to Rotman, and I will be pursuing my career in operations and supply chain. So definitely, my career played a very big role, and it gave me a lot of clarity in terms of what I want to do in the future. Otherwise, as an MBA is a tool for you to basically develop skills for the future career that you want to have. So I believe working before applying to an MBA college gives you an edge over the other there.
Thank you, Raghav. Cody, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I certainly did gain a lot of clarity. I first had a plan of doing an MBA back in 2016, but I had to wait 4 years because I really did not think I'll be doing justice if I did not have a sense of purpose, if I did not have the clarity. So waiting for a couple of years did give me a clarity on what I want to do right after an MBA. 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, I had a clear plan laid out over the 4 years that I waited to get the clarity. So definitely that helped out.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. So that's your answer, Hirday. I mean, you can definitely apply as a fresh undergraduate student because colleges give you the option to do so. But it really helps for you to work for a few years because that's when you actually understand yourself. You figure out what you like, you figure out what you don't like. You figure out what careers are more interesting to you, what careers are less appealing to you, and then yes, we are back. Uh, Abhijit, do we have more questions? Yes, I think we are back again. Kalyan has a question. Can you elaborate on tech and consulting jobs post MBA for a mechanical graduate with 5 years of experience in supply chain and quality assurance? Um, I mean, it's a very broad question, right? I mean, supply chain, again, there's different ways in which you may be involved in the supply chain. I know that in the IT world, you do work as an SAP consultant, and that may qualify as a supply chain job as well in certain areas. Then, of course, I mean, you may actually be working for a manufacturing firm, like an auto company, or like Raghav does for a construction firm. And even there is the concept of supply chain, but now you're actually the person who's in the middle of all these things, because you're responsible for delivering on the product. Quality assurance, again, it's typically a phrase that's bandied about in the IT sector, but again, there's quality assurance everywhere, right? So not quite sure what your actual experience is in. But if you are a technology person, then obviously roles in technology, as in product management or technology consulting, are definitely open for you. If you are talking about strategy consulting, then I mean that should also be open for you. But typically, what you would see is the companies that recruit for strategy consulting and management consulting jobs uh, require you to have a reasonably high GMAT. So let's say a 740 plus. So that becomes a consideration in the kind of jobs that you can recruit for. Right? Abhijit, do we have any other questions? And after 30, even US candidates find it very hard to get in. There is an analysis on GMAT where they analyze chances of getting in after 30. Uh, yeah, I mean, that seems to be the case, but it's also the case that after 30, fewer applicants apply, right? So if you look at the number of applicants, and if you look at the number of applicants who are 30 plus and the number of people who get in, the ratio might actually be very similar to what happens before. We found that in some of the top schools, it helps to be a younger applicant. But once you cross, let's say, Wharton and Booth in the rankings, and actually even Wharton and Booth, you may be a 30, 31, 32-year-old applicant. As long as you have good work experience and good GMATs, and you have the intent to contribute to the class, you should be fine. After 33 or 34, I think you start becoming a better fit for an executive MBA program. So this is a broad we need to have. Do US colleges, especially the STEM ones, generally accept greater than 10 years of work experience, or is it worth given 2 years investment in the money? So this is a question that depends on your individual circumstances. There is no one answer fits all here. But in general, there are a good number of colleges which accept students even after 10 plus years of work experience. But when it crosses 15 plus years of work experience, you may be a better fit for the executive MBA program. Is it worth given 2 years of investment and the money? That's a very personal question, changes from person to person. Uh, Abhijit, between extended education that you mentioned and HBX similar certificates, which one is looked upon more favorably? Extended education is actually a college course, right? You are getting it from the university, whereas HBX and similar certificates are outside of the college ecosystem. So it is a way for you to showcase your aptitude, but it is not the same as getting a college grade. All right. But having said that, a CFA or a PMP or a CFP, any one of these professional certifications would also be considered as alternative transcripts. Right? So that should be good. Should the goals be what we are passionate about or something that is realistic to our work experience? Yeah, it's always a difficult question for me to answer, but typically something that is realistic to your work experience is best. It would be even better if you are also passionate about it. But if your heart is in one place and your mind is in another, then and your hands are somewhere else, figure out where your mind is and where your hands are, which is what you're thinking about and what you have skills with. Talk about that for right now, but continue working on your passions and continue developing the skills. That's something you can also pick up in college. Any specific template or suggestions on what to ask alumni or current students in order to find the best school for oneself? Yeah, I'm going to open it up to the two of you. Cody, you want to take this question first?
There is no template as such, as long as you're asking the right set of questions on what you want to do, how clear you are about your goals, and whatever background research. Typically, you'll have to reach out to the alumni or current students after you have done your portion of background research. So you would want to ask them specific questions so that you have a bit of generic information that you can find on the internet, and then ask them specific questions on based on what your passion and what your career goals are, what kind of a fit will that person be with the college. And anything that you couldn't find on the website, you could definitely ask the alumni or the current student about that. So no generic template as such. But one advice is to keep the conversation formal unless the person comes at a later point of time and say, hey, let's just have a casual conversation. It's formal unless otherwise they are open to having that casual conversation. So that's one suggestion I have.
Raghav, do you want to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that keeping the conversation formal is mandatory at that point of time, and ask specific questions. And it is actually a very it depends from one individual to another individual. It's basically you are finding out what your fit is. So the question has to come from you based on what you want and what you expect from the college or the business school, and ask questions which are not available on the website. Otherwise, questions if you're asking which are available on the website, you can just simply go to the website and figure it out. Apart from that, I believe that reaching out to the alumni, alumni will have, as in the students who are studying in the business schools, and I think Cody can give you more insight into that. They won't have more than 15 to 20 minutes of time to talk to you and answer to your questions. So keep it specific, keep it crisp, and figure out what you want to know about that college. I think that's most important.
Thank you. Thank you, Raghav. And you bring up an important point, which is, be respectful of the other person's time. And I know I have both of you as guests today. So, guys, we'll close the discussion in 5 minutes from now, right? So 10:30 p.m. India time. Let's close this. And if you have more questions, you can always email me. Abhijit, if you can put up my email address, or conversely, our website where they can sign up for a profile evaluation. That would be good. So it is augustacademy.in. Let me put it up in a private chat. So yeah, Abhijit tells me that there's a long question queue. I can stay for another 15 minutes past the time, but Raghav and Cody, I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys to stay or leave depending on how much time you have, right? So I'll give you the option. And Abhijit, I'm just going to ask you guys to put up the website where they can sign up for the profile event. All right. Okay. Going back to questions. I'm an MBBS MD, want to manage a pharma team involved in research or a team involved in digital transformation. How shall I search for my B school? My 3 years of MD will be considered as job experience. No, the MD is, it's a degree. At best, it's a part-time internship, right? So just like a CA, right? So you may not be able to consider that as full-time experience. Any other questions, guys? What are some ways Indian MBA candidates can showcase community service? Is it too late to start the same year one will apply? So Cody, I know he has to leave shortly. Cody, do you want to take this question? How did you showcase your community service, or what do you think is a good way for you to do this?
It's again not the duration of your community service, it's how involved you're getting with the service. I think everything, whatever you put on your resume, is how much of your time you have devoted to it. I know I'm repeating the word again, but keep that in mind. Whatever community service you're starting or you're planning to start, you must show the intent. You must be able to quantify how it benefited, how many people it benefited, what was your role, what was your contribution, more than what was your role. They look for the contribution, and it should be quantifiable. I think there is no limit on when you would want to start, as long as you're dedicating your time in which you are volunteering. So it's never too late to start in the same year.
So I think we are reaching the end of time. I promised I would keep Raghav and Gauri for. Before they leave, I want to ask if they have any closing words of wisdom for our audience. Uh, Raghav, I don't know how much time you have, but you can answer this question and continue to say. Do you have any wisdom for our audience as an applicant?
Sure, Karthik. I believe that everyone who is applying to an MBA school should stay focused, and I believe that with the right amount of commitment and passion towards your will to join a business school of your choice should take you over there.
Thank
That's
you.
about it.
Short and sweet. Gauri, do you have any words of wisdom?
I would say everyone to be focused, not get distracted by whatever is happening around you. Stay focused, not just during your GMAT preparation, but you need to stay focused on when you're researching the colleges, you're reaching out to people to find out more. Uh, for that all to happen, you'll first need to introspect and figure out what it is that you want to do, because unless you have clarity on that, getting a GMAT score is not going to get you into a college or succeed in a college. You'll first need to look within and understand what it is that you want to do with with an MBA degree, and that's really important. But mostly, stay focused in whatever you're doing, and that will help you with your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Gauri. Thank you, Raghav. Guys, I think Gauri has to leave for a class right now, so we're going to say goodbye to Gauri. Raghav, if I can hold on to you for some more time for support with some questions, but if you have to leave, please send me a private message as well.
Sure,
Thank
Karthik.
you, Gauri,
I'll be
and
available.
see you. Yeah, bye. So now it's the two of us. Chetna has a question. Hi, Karthik. Is international work experience very important? Will day-to-day client team interactions across the globe be a good example for someone with no international work travel experience? Thanks. So, Chetna, we live in a world today where almost all teams are globally integrated. So, having international client and team interactions is almost considered par for the course. So, if you have 100 applicants, a good 80 applicants are going to have international collaborations on their resume, right? Now, there are only 2 or 3 colleges where international experience is almost mandatory. INSEAD is one college that comes to mind. And within the US, there are a few campuses like Tuck, which asks you to talk about your international experience. And if you have quality international experience, they would view it favorably, but it's not a method of qualification or disqualification. At INSEAD, it's more or less a disqualify kind of metric there, right? So at INSEAD, they would want you to actually live abroad for some time, and abroad is defined as outside of your home country, right? But most other colleges, it's not mandatory, right? So there you may talk about your client and team interactions, but just understand that it's not sufficiently differentiating. Abhijit, do we have other questions? How are the current employment prospects for Indian applicants who aim to do an MBA in the US in the next few years? This is something that may keep changing, Abhishek, right? So for someone who's applying now, we are applying in an economy that is looking like it is headed downward. College starts next year, which is 2021, and you enter the workforce in 2023, right? So if you're applying now, you're looking at working in 2023. Most best estimates place that the economy would be on its uptrend in 2023, right? So if everything works out as the pundits have predicted it to, then you're going to be graduating into a good economic year. And obviously, if you apply next year for class graduating in 2024, then it is that much more better, right? Uh, is that something that you have thought about, Raghav? Do you have any wisdom on this?
Yes, I think I had the same thought process, that the trends are showing that the economy will become better in by around 2022, and I'll be graduating in 23. So that gives me a good chance to enter the workforce and get employed fully after my MBA.
Sounds good. So, good news, guys. What suggestions do you have for students chasing 2+2 MBA programs, and how best can you help an evaluation profile for the same? Uh, get a very good GMAT score. 2+2 MBA programs are typically available only in colleges ranked in the top 10, and colleges ranked in the top 10 are looking at 750 plus GMAT scores from their applicants. So that's one thing. Have great extracurriculars. Not have extracurriculars, but have outstanding extracurriculars. That's very important. And if you can manage one or two internships, that would be good as well. So these would be my tips for students chasing 2+2 MBA programs. You don't need a 750 for ISB. You may be okay to apply to ISB with a 700. And if you're looking at ISB, then the other 2 points are still the same. Try to see if you can get good internship experience, have great extracurriculars as well. For USB schools, applying R1 with an average score 600 to 680 to 700, or R2 with a higher score 710 to 730. I think the latter is preferable in a normal admissions year. This is COVID admissions year, so I'm not clear how many seats colleges have available. But in a normal admissions year, definitely R2 710 to 730 is preferable. Now, the other follow-up question here is, are you going to be guaranteed of that score, right? Because that's something that's in future and maybe not in your hands yet. So if you have a realistic estimate that 710 to 730 is possible, then delay till R2. Otherwise, I think R1 is better. What's your take on the competition for foreign applicants given the COVID scenario? So what's happening is a lot of people who got admitted last year have deferred, okay? But I can tell you about August Academy students, about more than half of them actually started college, all right? So it's not as bad as what the popular blogs make it out to look like, all right? A good number of students have started college, but a definite number of students have deferred to the next year as well. So then there is all this concern about what does that mean for the number of seats available next year. And there are some colleges like Harvard which have actually said we are going to increase our seats by 200. Okay, not every college has made that commitment publicly, but in general, I think you may expect that they would try to increase the number of seats a little bit to accommodate. Uh, Raghav, are you part of any WhatsApp groups or anything? Do you have any insight into this?
Actually, no, I am not part of any of the groups. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think it's likely to happen in the week coming up, maybe, or maybe in like 2 weeks or something, right? So Raghav just got admitted about 2-3 days ago. Let's take a minute to congratulate Raghav, right? So, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
What's the process to score a decent scholarship, and what are the other ways one can fund their education? And also, how does one fund their day-to-day expenses? In order for you to get a decent scholarship, I'm going to take a US-centric approach to this question. All you have to do is be one of the topmost candidates applying to that particular college, right? What does it mean for you? For you, it may mean applying slightly lower down the rankings than to a college where you may just about get in, right? And this is something that's true across the board. So if you're the kind of candidate who just about makes it to Harvard, then Kellogg may give you a good scholarship. If you just about make it to Kellogg, then maybe Duke will give you a good scholarship. So on and so forth, right? I mean, it's a sliding scale. Um, so be one of the best candidates, and that's a combination of industry, sector, how impactful you've been in your workplace, your essays, your GMAT score, all of this, right? But what are the other ways one can fund their education? People take loans. And there is also the concept of family money. Parents may sponsor like part of it. I mean, that's not true for everyone. uh, MBA education is very expensive, so for the most part I think you would be dependent on a loan. Now loans, you can source it. I'm assuming most of the audience here is from India. You may either source it from India, or there are a few colleges in the top 20, top 25 in the US which would offer you a US based loan as well. Okay. Kellogg, for example, is a college which offers you a US based loan, which you can avail without getting a US citizen co-signer. All right. What's the advantage? If you get a loan in India, typically most banks will ask you for collateral equivalent to that amount, right? So if you're spending about 1.5 crore rupees, that means they may have requirements where you furnish a property whose value is roughly about 1.7, 1.8 crore rupees. That may not be possible for everyone, right? Again, this is the max case estimate. If you're getting a scholarship, then the loan amount that you would require also goes down significantly, which means the value of the property which you have to give as collateral also goes down significantly. All right, so it's all corresponding to each other. With regards to a US no cosigner required loan, then all those things become immaterial. The interest rates are lower with regards to US loans, but there's also currency inflation. So $1 is about 75 rupees right now. When you graduate, it may be about 80 rupees. So just the fact that you have like a loan for 4% and something for 10% here doesn't actually make a difference, because the dollar rupee conversion rate also changes, right? And then there is Prodigy. I'm sure GMAT Club is probably going to have a session with Prodigy also at some point in time. So they also have options for funding your education. I think this question is relevant to you, Raghav. For a person in supply chain procurement function having 10 years in manufacturing industries experience, what are the colleges that should be targeted? Why don't you take a shot at it, and then I'll take a shot at it.
Sure, Karthik. For supply chain management, I believe moving into consulting role, I think NCR would be one of the best business schools to make that transition. And in terms of, it depends on as in which consulting are you looking for? As in, are you looking for supply chain consulting, or are you looking for you going into a general consulting role? But as far as my research goes, if you're transitioning into a consulting role, NCR should be your first choice.
Okay. Let me add to that. Within US schools, I think, again, it's a sliding scale, depends on what kind of GMAT you are able to get for yourself. If you have strong work experience and you are able to get a good GMAT, MIT is probably the place where you need to start looking at. Definitely, there's this program called the Leaders for Global Operations, LGO. That's a program that you should be looking at. Slightly lower down the ranking list is Michigan Ross. There are two programs you can look at Michigan. There's the regular MBA, and then there's also this MS in Supply Chain Management. That's also something that you can look at. And then you have Tepper, and then so on and so forth, right? You have Notre Dame, you have Ohio State, you have Arizona Cary, you have Michigan State Broad, you have PSU Smeal. So these are some of the colleges, starting from MIT going up to Michigan State, right? So, that's it for today, Abhijit. Thank you. Karthik and Raghav, any final thoughts? Raghav, I know you shared your final thoughts, but this is another opportunity for you to share your final thoughts. Go for it.
I'd just like to say best of luck, guys. Keep it going, and apply as soon as you can and get into the colleges that you want to.
Thank you, Raghav. Guys, I wish you all the best. The MBA is a transformational experience, and there is a lot of concern in the air right now. But by and large, I think a lot of this concern should disappear by the time you guys graduate, which would be in 2023 if you're looking at a 2-year program. The basics, get the basics right, get a good GMAT score, start working on your essays early, and think about your goals, put together a tightly integrated application, and I think you should be on your way to getting in good at it. and hopefully a good scholarship as well. Wish you all the best. Thank you, Raghav, and thank you, GMAT Club, for having us today. If you have any questions, please schedule a consultation at our website. See you guys.
Okay. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Raghav.